If you've ever been in my comments or thought, how can white privilege be real? Japan was a colonizer too. This video is relevant for you. I'm going to explain that question. So I'm Dr. Anna Schmidt. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist who researches the unwritten rules of work for the working class and neurodivergence. Researching that means I have to think about culture a lot and its impact on people and organizations. My partner and I are traveling around Asia for the next 3 months. We're starting in Hong Kong right now. We're doing mainland China, Vietnam, Thailand, and Japan. For context, he's not American. From Albania, lived most of his life in the UK. We met in the US. I'm from the US, and he knows I'm very much a social justice warrior. In Hong Kong right now, we leave for mainland China on Saturday, and we're preparing for the shift in technology that a lot of Western apps and websites are blocked. And my partner, whose family, his parents, lived through communism in Albania, has mixed feelings about that. He was also talking about the censorship that happens in China. Like if you asked about the 1988 massacre in ChatGPT, it's not going to tell you what it would tell you in the US. And of course, I was like, well, the US has its own propaganda too. And our history has been heavily whitewashed. We just do it differently. I could tell he was getting a little defensive. Not in a defending either country way, but I think he thinks because I'm American and a social justice warrior that I don't criticize anyone who's not the US, or that I only see the US as the bad guy. And I was trying to explain to him how it's different for Asians versus Asian Americans depending on the context that they are in. It's like, I don't think that China and Japan have completely clean, perfect histories. I just understand that in my country, where we have had the Chinese Exclusion Act and Japanese internment camps, that the experience of Asian Americans is different than it would be necessarily in their own countries. And of course, even within their own countries, there are different class privileges as well, right? And I'm sure regional. And I could tell he wasn't really getting what I'm saying. But he was like, no, I think I get it. And I was like, I don't think he gets it. So I was like, here's an analogy. As I was recently in Dublin, the Irish who were Catholic were treated as and legally scripted as second-class citizens under English rule. Protestants were first-class citizens. Also class and gender implications in there as well. Let's just talk about those two. Irish people who were Catholic could not own property, had to work on plantations, couldn't intermarry with the English or Protestants, weren't paid as much, were left to starve. They don't call it the potato famine in Ireland. They call it the Great Hunger because it wasn't a natural disaster. It was just the English starving them. Now, that is not the same as the experience of Catholics in Spain during the Inquisition, which is a famous example of a harm the Catholic Church has done, which as a Catholic kid growing up in the Bible Belt, which was predominantly Protestant, I was reminded of all the time of the harms that the Catholic Church did there, or the Queen did in the name of the Catholic Church, of unaliving anyone who was not a Catholic. Spain did a lot of that as well as they colonized Latin America. So I told my partner, I was like, look, the identity of being Catholic isn't inherently marginalized or privileged. It depends on the context that you are in, what makes an identity privileged or marginalized. A Catholic in Spain is different than a Catholic in Ireland. And that's where the realization went over his face. I was like, look, I don't want you to think walking around or traveling around Asia that I'm blind to learning history and culture. But that does not mean I do not have a responsibility when I'm designing work programs in the US or evaluating them, or looking at class variables and how they vary by race and unwritten rules, to be aware of the stereotypes they have there based on the conditions they've been in there and how that influences them. Japan colonizing China doesn't change that Asian American women very rarely make it into leadership positions in the United States, even when they are very well qualified. So he found that analogy very helpful. If you hope it does for you too. If you want to learn more about that, I do have a Substack on Ireland, and I'll be adding Substacks along the way as we're in Asia, but I still have to get through Germany and Panama before I even get to that. So link in my bio for that.